You're listening to the Run for Your Lives podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And this is the Run for Your Lives podcast.
This episode is the post-apocalyptic science fiction film The Girl with All the Gifts, directed by Colm McCarthy, released in the US on September 23rd, 2017.
Ooh.
It has been that long already.
It has.
I guess that makes sense. I was looking at the book, which we'll talk about that a little bit,
Yes.
was released back in 2013, which I was like, that didn't feel like that long ago. But
I know. I remember watching this movie the first time, but I've not seen it since. So this was a revisit to it, and I just finished reading the book prior to watching the movie again.
Nice. Yeah. We'll talk about that then here. This is based off of, yes, obviously the book from 2013 written by M.R. Carey under the same name. That, if not my favorite book of all time, it's definitely up there. M.R. Carey is my favorite author of all time. If I have to say, who's your favorite author? Easily him, because, he put out like another series of stuff and did some like Marvel comics and things under a different name. But every novel he has released under M.R. Carey, I either have read or own and am planning to read soon. Like they're in my stack. Yeah, he's just an incredible author, and I love his voice and his style and the stories that he tells, because it's all there's a lot of heart and a lot of deep character things. You really feel connected to the characters he writes, like them personally, but then he always knows how to break your heart in the best ways, because everything he writes is dark and like depressing in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of horror and thriller aspects, and he really knows how to manipulate your emotions with the characters that he makes you love. So I have to give him a lot of credit for that. So hopefully, if he hears this, I don't know, throwing that out there, I love you. Love your work. Huge fan. And so it's been a long time coming to finally cover this movie. I'm glad that we're getting to do it.
Yes, me too. I had never read the book until recently. I really enjoyed the way that he broke the characters down, the way he told the story, and was so descriptive of every character. So you could build the characters in your head. And I had forgotten a lot about the movie while I was reading the book. So it was like it was a new story to me, because it had been a couple years since I'd seen the movie. And I really built characters up in my head from reading the book. And then I go and watch the movie and I'm like, that's interesting. There's some differences.
Yeah, there are definitely differences, which is funny enough, as huge of a fan as I am, you may be a little more equipped to talk about some of those comparisons today, just because you're really fresh off of just finishing reading it. And it's been a few years since I read it. So it'll, that'll be fun. But, the story itself, because, I read it when it was pretty new, not long after it came out, and was a big fan of it. So, the movie wasn't out, wasn't really a thing. And so I remember seeing the movie was happening, seeing some of the casting things, and like really following the process up before the movie actually was made and came out. That was really cool for me to do that. And then since the movie came out, I've seen it several times. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this. So it's cool to talk about it.
Yeah, we thought it would be fun to talk about this movie, especially because Pate gave me this book last year when we met, and I've had it sitting on my desk because I wanted to read it, and I didn't take the time. So we set a goal of being able to cover this movie, and I wanted to read the book before we covered it. So we just set a date. Okay, we're going to do this. I think I can get through the book by then. And so that's what we did. And so this should be a really fun discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get started with some production notes. Filming took place in the West Midlands and Staffordshire in England, and included drone footage of Pripyat and Chernobyl in Ukraine. The footage of Chernobyl stood in for an urban-looking London after an apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's based on the 2013 novel of the same name by M.R. Carey, which we talked about. He wrote the book and the screenplay at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool because there are differences between the two.
Yeah.
Originally, it was titled She Who Brings the Gifts, but was changed to match the book, which is The Girl with All the Gifts. The title is a reference to the ancient Greek legend of Pandora, who was the gift giver.
Mm-hmm. Great way they throw that in there. Just to give a little input on the movie is jumping the gun a little bit to do that. But while it's on my mind, you're like, why not? It's cool that Miss Justineau tells the story of Pandora to Melanie and the students with that. It's kind of based off of somebody because of their curiosity and their uniqueness.
Mm-hmm.
Ends up, throwing every bad and evil thing in the eyes of a lot of people, onto the earth, and kind of brings upon all of this destruction. But there's also hope there. Maybe not for the people who thought they would have the hope, but hope for somebody.
Yes,
right?
Definitely. The story of Pandora is one that I've heard a few times, so it was cool to hear it told this way to the classroom of children.
Mm-hmm.
By Miss Justineau. So the budget for this movie was about £4 million, which is just under $5 million. And it grossed $4.08 million at the box office. It is 111 minutes long. Pake, bring on a synopsis.
All right. In the least spoilery imaginable synopsis I could find. A scientist and a teacher living in a dystopian future embark on a journey of survival with a special young girl named Melanie.
Oh, Melanie. Yes, there's a lot about Melanie that we're going to get into having this discussion for sure, because I feel she is the main character.
Oh, for sure. She is the girl.
She is the girl.
All the gifts.
Yes. Absolutely. There's just so much to talk about. There was one part when I was going through the book that stuck out to me, which was people show their true colors when they face the most dire of circumstances. And I think we see that a lot in the movie and the book.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. And so as we do on this podcast, kind of break things down character by character. But again, in a story like this, when all of the main characters are kind of all together at the same time, doing everything together, we're going to jump around all over the place.
Yes,
try to stay coherent and through the movie, but we'll also, I know how I am, we'll be talking about something that happened at the beginning of the movie, and I'll be like, and that brings us to the very end of the movie because it ties in because this happened. Because that's how I work. But, that's okay, because hopefully those listening to this have seen the movie, and we can spoil it all over and jump all over the place and not worry about it. And then those who have not seen the movie but listen, well, they're going to hear the whole movie anyway by the end of the podcast. And
yes,
they know what they're getting into. So,
well, I think we can start out by saying, at least I can say, I really recommend that you read the book. Even if you've seen the movie, I think you should read the book because there's just this way of storytelling that M.R. Carey presents to you, and it pulls you in. So that you really do care about the characters, and you are devastated at times because it breaks your heart.
Mm-hmm.
But it all drives the story to where it ends. And as Pake said a few minutes ago, it gives hope to the people. It gives hope to some people, but maybe not the people that you were thinking would get the hope.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, the book definitely, as is always going to be the case. I don't think there's really ever been a case where it's like, oh no, the movie took what was in the book and then just really enlightened and brightened and broadened everything. Maybe The Hobbit. But that was, I don't know if they really, it still wasn't in, making it better with what they did with The Hobbit. They just added a bunch of filler to a kid story. That's a different situation, I think.
Yeah. We're not going to cover The Hobbit on Run for Your Lives.
I don't think so.
It doesn't fit within our realm. So we're definitely not going to do that.
No. But yeah, so of course, like Daphne said, highly recommend. Check out the book because there is so much meat to the story. There's so much, and the characters are just so well written. And I think going into the movie, I think it did translate over really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, you have to cut some things, you have to change some things for time restraints to fit it into, a feature film length. But the heart of the story was kept intact. And again, that goes to because he wrote, M.R. Carey wrote the screenplay at the same time, knowing here's the tale I want to tell in this book, but I want to make sure to tell the same story in movie form and make it make sense and get the same point across. And I think he did a really good job with that.
Definitely. I have to agree. Well, I feel like we have to get started with Melanie.
Absolutely. This is going to be one of those things where we're going to go all of our like Melanie notes and then get through that and be like, and we've already sprinkled everything else in and we're pretty much done. Like, I feel like that's how it's going to go.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that is how it's going to be. I'm totally fine with that. I'm down for it. Yeah. So I feel like we have to get started. And we meet her in a terribly sad existence. I mean, living in a concrete cell with her only possessions are really these 2 photos.
Mm-hmm.
One is of like a black and white kitten, and the other one looks like it's of the outdoors.
Yeah.
And she seems like a normal little girl. She's sitting there and counting. And then we realize just how different the initial impression is.
Yeah, because everything it's like a prison cell. It is militaristic and locked down. She's being restrained and, gets in this wheelchair, all these straps and all these things. I mean, she looks like Hannibal Lecter in a high security prison. And this doesn't really bother her. You'd think like, oh, what a horrible situation, but it's all she knows.
Yes.
And she's the most pleasant and chipper little girl imaginable through all of it. She's even, when Kieran Gallagher is in there strapping her down, she's like, oh, you missed a spot, basically. I mean, she even knows, making sure that he's doing his job correctly and saying, good morning, good morning, Gallagher, good morning, this, good morning, this, good morning, Sergeant Parks, good morning. I mean, she's just going to make friends with everyone, even if they hate her and she hates them. She's going to be as pleasant as she can.
That's what struck me at the beginning, was just the cruelty of the soldiers toward the children. Not physically, but calling them names. Feeding them, feeding times like they're being fed like a dog, and calling them things like abortions. I mean, it was just sad and terrifying to watch. And it doesn't seem to affect the kids really, because they don't know that it's like they don't understand that it's derogatory.
Yeah, it's just, that's life. That's what it is. And it does seem, without knowing the backstory of this movie or what you're getting into, it does seem very strange and out of place. And why is this happening? Of course, you come to realize, I mean, the reason is for they have to, these soldiers and generals and people, the doctors and everybody working there, I mean, they have to separate their emotions and their thoughts and be like, these aren't kids. These aren't people. These are hungries. These are monsters. And they have to treat them as such for their own safety, because if they get too attached and look at them as little children and want to form a bond with them, as we see Helen Justineau is doing with Melanie, and it gets her in trouble.
Because they are test subjects, basically. They are being experimented on. We see Dr. Caldwell come in and is talking to Melanie gives her a riddle even. And so they're having this, discussion. And then she says, give me a number between 1 and 20. And she gives her number 13. The next day, Kenny, who is student number 13, no longer comes to class. And that becomes a new riddle for Melanie because she doesn't understand. She doesn't know where she is. Like, she doesn't know where Kenny went.
Yeah.
and she's puzzled by it. She looks at his door and it's closed. And she starts to put these pieces together to try to figure out what's going on, like the riddles or the problems that Dr. Caldwell gives her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, just to go off, on a base level kind of thing, the casting, Sania Nanua.
Perfect.
Just did incredible in this role as Melanie. Absolutely loved it. As somebody who's a big fan of the book and read the book and knows everything about the character from the book, she's not what you expect.
No.
And I think it's on purpose, her and also the character of Kieran Gallagher, with Fiseo Akinade playing him. And, not to get too, it's not political at all. It's, you think it's political, you got a problem. I'm just going to be blunt, because that's the thing. I mean, there were people who were fans of the book or who knew the story who were upset about them casting Black people in the roles of characters described as a white blonde girl and a redheaded Irishman in the books.
Yes.
And it's fiction. Mm-hmm. It's a story. It's interchangeable. I was like, if these adaptations make you upset, there's a bigger issue at hand.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. So, because I think they did an incredible job. This girl, Sania, did an incredible job as Melanie. She gave so much life to this character on screen and was just adorable when she needed to be adorable, fierce when she needed to be fierce, emotional when she needed to be. All of the points I think she managed to nail directly.
I'd have to agree. Yeah, it was interesting for me just coming off reading the book and then watching the movie. It's like, I knew that they had swapped things around a little bit. So I knew that Sania was not the Melanie that we meet in the book. But I was okay with it.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, too, Gemma Arterton, who played Helen Justineau, didn't match.
No, because then it's kind of the opposite, because Justineau is very much described as an olive-skinned, kind of a darker person in the book. And so it really was just kind of a different adaptation. It's the same story, but it's, I think the adaptations of the characters and the casting there, I was like, we can create a whole different visual world and it's fine.
Yeah. The one character I do think hit the nail on the head was Paddy Considine as Eddie Parks, Sergeant Eddie Parks. I thought
I read it with Stephen Lang in mind the whole time.
You did? I'm down with Paddy Considine. I think he did such a great job.
Yeah, Paddy Considine is great. Of course, I'm very familiar with him, being the Edgar Wright fanboy that I am, because he is very much, Edgar Wright. He's a staple in the Edgar Wright Cornetto trilogy,
he is.
Having roles in both Hot Fuzz and The World's End. So
yeah, he's great. He was in The Outsider. He had a great role as Claude Bolton in The Outsider. And he's going to be, and is filming, he's going to be King Viserys I Targaryen, or Viserys I Targaryen, in House of the Dragon, which is coming up.
Nice, yes.
It's like, yes. He's had some great roles, and I am always surprised. He nails them. Even though they're all very different, he's really talented, and I appreciate what he gives to any role that he's in. Yeah,
because this Sergeant Parks came with a lot of grit and a lot of strength, but then a lot of, emotion. While on the other hand, where I know him the best from, these Edgar Wright roles, I mean, he's comedic gold.
Yes,
so,
yes, he is.
To be able to do these things, it's great. And then honestly, I think the casting choice I was most excited for when I saw the casting for the movie after I'd read the book, when those were being announced, Glenn Close as Caldwell.
Oh, she was great.
That's the one that I was like, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, I see it immediately. The second I heard the name, I was like, nope, that makes sense. Yes, please do that.
I feel like she brought a little, not humility, because she stuck to Caldwell's mission.
Yeah.
But I really didn't like her in the book.
Right.
And Glenn Close made me relate to her just a little bit more, so I didn't dislike her as much.
She was really able to get it across that, like, she's not the villain of the story.
No.
She fully believes in what she's doing and has been able to justify it for herself, no matter she's set emotions and connections aside because this is her mission. And she does a much better job of conveying that. Like in the movie, Glenn Close is able to convey that very well.
Yeah, I agree. I thought she did such a great job. I learned something, and I have to say this now, even though I have it in my little trivia facts for later. I have to say...
I have a feeling I know what you're going to say since we're talking Glenn Close, right?
Her sister-in-law, Deb, is a massive fan of zombie movies. So she got to come on set and be one of the Hungries. It was in the scene where the group has to work their way through the crowd of them. She's wearing a blue knit sweater with green facial fungus and blood around the mouth and neck. I'm like, that does not narrow it down when you look at all the people. But it's it's one that Glenn actually stares at when her character walks past. And yeah. I remember even watching this, just knowing that. I was like, I know that her sister-in-law is one of these. And then it got to that point, and I was like, oh yeah, that's her. Because there's that connection. I was like, that was right. Because I own this. I own the Blu-ray. And so, of course you do.
On many of the times, on one of my many watches of this movie, I took time to even go through special features and stuff. And there's a whole behind-the-scenes featurette of Glenn and Deb talking about this whole thing and like showing some footage of them filming it and like interviews with them talking about how cool it was of an experience to get Deb into this. And so I've seen all the like interviews behind the scenes on that whole thing, and it's a blast to watch for sure.
We did get to see a little bit of sass from Melanie.
That's literally my note is Melanie's got some sass.
She does.
Sergeant Parks.
She does. She's really angry at him because he interrupted this moment between Helen, Justino, and Melanie in the classroom where Melanie had just given this beautiful story. Justino had just said, I'm going to untie your arms. You can write a story. You can read it, to the class. And so Melanie had told this wonderful story, and it made Helen cry.
Yeah. Well, it was basically, her story was her love for Miss Justino through the lens of a mythological tale. These characters are clearly representing them. She's not trying to hide it. And it's where the girl saves the beautiful, kind woman from a monster, and they live together happily ever after. That's her fantasy dream here of this one person who she has found has been kind to her and has been nice to her and has always been somebody she can metaphorically lean on.
She's never...
And so to actually get a physical touch from this person that she admires so much is just heaven.
Yeah, it meant so much to her. But of course, Sergeant Eddie Parks catches her, interrupts that beautiful moment, and when he, in the process of wheeling Melanie back to her bunk, he looks at her and is very stern. What are you looking at? And she laid it out there. If I had a box full of all the evils in the world, I'd stick you inside and close the lid. She likes me best. She touched me. She wouldn't ever touch you. And the sass in that was just amazing. But of course, he responds by leaving her there.
Yeah.
In the restraints. Usually they let them out of the restraints, but she was left to sit there.
And then, luckily Justino finds her in that state. So so Helen goes in to free her, accidentally sets her off in this kind of feeding frenzy with the scent, which is just heartbreaking for both of them. Like, you can see the emotion on both of them. Melanie being so taken aback and frustrated and sad with herself, being like, I can't help it, and I'm so sorry that I did that to you. With Helen on the other end being like, I'm so sorry I made you do that. It is both of them feeling a lot of guilt and shame and sadness about this small situation, but being there for each other, which, to talk about that a little bit. Yeah. The feeding frenzy thing. Cause we see that a little before that with when Parks comes in to reprimand Helen for touching Melanie. And that's kind of his, showing her like, oh no, see, here's what happens when it's like, you're treating her like a child. You're treating her like a person. And he wipes that like scent blocker off of himself and sticks his arm in front of one of the boys in the classroom just to see that, instinctive reaction that they have as a hungry. And it sets off a whole chain reaction as his scent wafts through that side of the classroom. And he's like, he felt like, this is a time I need to remind you, this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, they're not children. And you see that, and in watching it, I still felt so sad.
Yeah.
Because I get where Helen is coming from. She's the one that teaches these kids. She's the one who spends all this time with them. So she's bonding with some of them. And, I mean, she's concerned. Especially when Melanie doesn't show up to class the next day.
Yeah. Because, again, Caldwell, same, pick a number. She doesn't even have a chance. She was pick a number, and she was like 4.
Yeah.
And it's not really spoken about in the movie so much, and I don't remember if it was more in the book. I don't think so, but it's kind of, it's showing this logical, intelligent brain, that it's not a fungus-driven brain, that there is a real logic and reasoning and problem-solving that is going on in an actual child's brain.
Yes.
Where I think Melanie was putting pieces together. When she said 13 and Kenny was gone, I think she picked 4 knowing that's her door number to see what would happen.
Yep. She wanted to know. I mean, it goes back to the problem that Caldwell gave her about a cat being in a box and is it alive or dead?
Mm-hmm.
Here you are. That's
the question Caldwell's trying to figure out about Melanie and the other kids here. They are the Schrodinger's children of this place. Are they alive or are they just dead? And is the fungus just evolved in a different way to make them, she says, mimicry, exquisite mimicry of behaviors that they've seen. Is that all it is, or are they really alive?
Yeah. So poor Melanie is taken there and drugged and put on a table, and she just wants to go back to the classroom. It's like she got the answer to her question. She was asking Parks the whole way walking over there. Where are we going? Why are we going here? What's going on? She just kept asking him. And this is when we also start to learn that there's some security issues here at the facility.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's into Caldwell's lab, so to speak. And yeah, you notice that Melanie takes note of the brain in the jar labeled 13.
Mm-hmm.
She's, a lot of little things that are easily going to add up to kind of freak her out. And that's where she's, I want to go back. This is not where I want to be. Things are off. Things don't feel right.
She's surprisingly calm, though. I mean, even though she has been kind of sedated.
Yeah.
We learned that wasn't enough to really sedate her. She seems very calm about it. She's not freaking out on the table screaming. Right.
It's like you can see that she's bothered, but yeah, she keeps her cool. Really, you never see her overly emotional or reactionary ever. I mean, we have the scene with her and the other hungry children out in the wild where, she's a lot more vocal and a lot more
aggressive. She's
aggressive. But it's on purpose. It's a performance.
Yeah.
That's all she's doing there. It's
because she's thinking. She knows what she needs to do. She's a critical thinker, and she deals a lot in logic and how to solve problems. And so she looks at situations and figures them out.
Yeah. And I think the most agitated she gets in this lab, this scenario here, is when Helen Justineau comes in to stop what's happening, because she knows that Dr. Caldwell is about to try to perform this biopsy on Melanie, which will kill her.
Yes.
And Helen is like, I'm done with this. I did not sign up to get attached to some child for you to kill them in a lab the next day. Which, Caldwell is kind of right in saying, through their lens of being like, that's exactly what you signed up for. It's your fault you got attached.
Yeah. This is why we call them names and distance ourselves from them. Because we can't get attached, because they are for research. It's for us to figure out how to solve this problem.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there's that connection with Justineau. So when Justineau is then detained and restrained and held and taken out, that's when Melanie gets the most agitated in here. It's not for her own safety, but it's for Helen's.
Yeah. She is so devoted to Helen. She has this bond with her. She cares about her. It's devotion. Like, she's devoted to her. Whatever, she will do whatever to try to keep her safe. Including biting out the necks of officers who were mistreating her.
Yeah.
I mean, she went all Rick Grimes on them.
Oh, yeah. She did. I mean, after escaping, because, the Hungries bust through, Dr. Selkirk gets bit and turns fast. That's where we get our first turn. They're like, yeah, there's no waiting around. It's not The Walking Dead. Like,
no.
You're going to know pretty quickly.
This is Train to Busan fast.
Yeah. But yeah, Melanie's able to free herself after that because, I mean, the hungry Selkirk, not going to bother her. She's one of them. And she's busy licking some blood off the floor.
Oh, man. Melanie seemed scared in that scene a little bit just because she wasn't quite sure what was really going on. But she immediately looks for something to cut herself free.
Mm-hmm.
And then she goes outside and she sees all of these things happening. The massive horde of Hungries attacking everybody. And she's just looking around like, this is a girl who hasn't been outside to play.
Right. Quite a scene for the first look at the outside world, right?
Yeah.
But she focuses right in on Melanie, or not on Melanie, on Helen, like we were saying, on Justino, and seeing she's in danger. These other people are like abusive towards her.
Mm-hmm.
And she just kind of tunnel vision in to help her. And yeah, she does end up killing, but biting, killing, and turning these two other soldiers. But I mean, she doesn't even think about that, which then was really interesting. And they don't ever explain it in the movie. And again, it's been a while for the book, so I don't remember if they did or if this was something that was a little different. But instead of like the normal Hungries that are just like, you're kind of ravenous, rabid zombies, when she feeds, it's almost like it sucks all of the energy out of her and she like has to take a nap or she gets real drowsy and has a moment where she's just zoned, I
noticed that and I don't remember. That would have been early on in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember off the top of my head if it had addressed that. That's not one of the things I wrote down, but there are a lot of things I wrote down. There were also these junkers that they referred to. Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were not in the movie, but they were in the book.
But yeah, so that's how she can save Helen, but then ends up passing out for a little bit, which Helen then comes to and picks her up and jumps in the van driven by Dylan and Parks and takes off, which is funny. They don't even notice that she's carrying Melanie as they stop and load her in. Yeah, so of course Parks was not happy once he realized she was there.
No.
But Caldwell's also with them, and Caldwell is still on that mission like we were talking about. And
yeah, she belongs to my research.
Yeah, we have to keep her here. And so they're like, well, what do we do? Which I love that, Justino's like, still not happy, still pretty pissed with Caldwell, especially after she suggests that they throw Melanie in the wheel well, and she's like, no. No,
you're not going to do that. Happening. She punches her. Oh my God. Oh, at that point, I became her biggest fan. It was so awesome when she punched her out. Oh my gosh. I loved it. She doesn't get enough people standing up to her, so I really, really appreciated that.
Right. Yeah, so their backup plan for that then, Melanie goes on top. You're riding on top of the truck.
So she's getting the scenic view of the world that she's never really seen.
Right.
Which I love the scenery. Like, I love the way that they showed us everything. I feel like cinematography, it was just breathtaking.
Yeah, it was really cool. You're like experiencing as she's experiencing.
Yeah, through her eyes. Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. And they make their stop, kind of fill up on some water. But I love that Melanie, even in all of this tense situation, she's just a normal, like highly curious child, where, the simplest things, like she's got to question Parks about his use of soft rounds. Well, why are they called soft rounds? Oh, well, why do they do that? Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that?
Yeah.
And, we have Dylan just being like, do you want me to muzzle it? Not even calling it her, just like, do we need to shut it up? And Parks instead humors her and answers all of her questions. And then I love at the end, thank you, Sergeant Parks. And then just so pleasant with that. And then at that moment, you're like, I think she's going to start growing on him a little bit. Parks, the one that hated her the most, distanced himself the most, is going to end up warming up to her throughout this movie.
He has the biggest arc in this movie. From where he started and the way he thought about things to where he ends up when it comes to Melanie, it's transformative. Like, it's really incredible to see. And having read the book just prior to watching, I got the opportunity to read it and then also see it all come to life too. Yeah. And that's something they did keep from the book. And I appreciated that so much because...
Yes. But I like the way that they do it with Parks here, where it's not just like, and now she's my little girl and I love her forever.
Yeah, no.
Like it's still very professional, cautious respect.
Yes.
He learns to respect her and he trusts her, sending her out to, clear the area outside the hospital for them, or to go search a route, reconnaissance a route for them first with a walkie-talkie, and to have this trust and this respect for her. But also, I mean, when she's back in the van, at that moment, Justin was like, she's got a muzzle on her face and her hands are tied behind her back, and you're still afraid of her? Where he goes, yeah, and you should be too.
Yeah.
And then even later when she saves them from the hungry children, and then Melanie yells out at them, it's like, pretend you're scared of me. And he just looks at Justin and is like, pretend. He's still like, she's still a danger when she needs to be,
She's still dangerous. She's not someone to be trusted, because if she's hungry, she has to control it. And I mean, we kind of saw her attempt to control it at the beginning when Helen was in the room trying to get her restraints off, because Helen was everything to her. She didn't want to hurt her.
Yeah.
I will say that the Hungries themselves, especially once they get to London and they're walking through, the ones that look like they're standing up asleep, I started to get like the Last of Us vibes.
Oh, very much so. Because it's similar. Yeah. The Last of Us, for those who've played those games, and soon to be a TV series.
It is! I'm so excited.
I mean, they're very similar fungus-based zombie. The more they develop, they're taken over more by the fungus, so they're slower, but more dangerous as spore spreaders in a different way. But, but yeah, because that's something, just to kind of break from that a little bit, the Hungries, the kind of zombies in this movie and the book, it's fungus-based cordyceps, which is one of the reasons that this book resonated with me so strongly when I first read it, because, Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, very real, something I was intrigued by and, was doing a lot of research on even before I read the book. It's just something that I just definitely was like, oh, this is crazy, because it is a very, very real thing in nature. It's a parasitic fungus that takes over the host and their brain functions and makes them do unnatural things in order to best spread the spores of the fungus. Mm-hmm. Luckily, it is not infective in humans at all yet.
Yeah, I know.
Right. No, in nature, this takes place in ants and other insects, beetles, and things like that. They don't bite each other to spread like zombies. It's the zombie ant disease is what it's kind of colloquially known as.
Yeah.
But it's not really zombies. Again, they don't infect each other through violent tendencies, but they do play off of what it really does, even in this story a little bit. Because in real life, Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, or unilateralis, whatever, it forces the ants and bugs to crawl up to really high places, to where then it attaches them to whatever limbs and leaves and things up there in the tops of trees, and then it overtakes them, kills them, sprouts these stalks with kind of a seed pod with spores. And when they burst open, because it's a much higher area, the spores are able to spread to a wider area and infect other insects and do the same thing. So it is in its way to spread among a civilization or population of insects. And so I feel like if zombies were actually possible and would happen, this kind of form is the most likely scenario to me. I'm like, because it is a fungus and a thing that does exist in real life and in nature. And it's somewhat plausible or feasible to be like, is there a form of this that would be able to be contracted in humans? You know?
You never know, Peg. You know, I mean, we're living in a time where people are talking about monkeypox.
Right.
So, I don't know. After 2 years of a pandemic, I'm just expecting anything can happen, I guess.
Right. Yeah, so you're saying, the ones that are just standing like they're sleeping, because it's these hungries when they're not in an alerted state, they're like, it's like the fungus or this cordyceps is conserving the body energy that, because when it takes over, there's still only so much energy a body has. Yes. And they feed to build up more energy, but there's only so much you can do as populations dwindle in humans and they're all barricading themselves away in laboratories and things, that you've got to conserve that energy. So if they're not in an alert state and feeding and hunting, they're just kind of standing dormant in one place. They're alerted by smell. That's just why the people have the E-blocker. But also, as they mentioned, loud enough sounds, quick enough movements will alert them as well. So that's why we have that whole scene of them having to just kind of sneak through a whole group of them to get supplies, slowly and silently.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of, again, similar to Last of Us does some of those things too. Those scenes where, man, the clickers.
I know. That's what I thought of as soon as I saw them. I'm like, these are clickers.
Yeah.
They are clickers. That is the visualization outside of a video game. It has to be. It did make me jump and also laugh when Caldwell kind of goes on her own. She sees a woman pushing a carriage and the body's kind of moving in the carriage. Well, what she doesn't know is it's a rat.
Mm-hmm.
The baby's long since been dead. But it made me jump, and I also laughed because I'm like, she's so set on this mission. She's trying to find specimens to study. She would have taken that baby right out of there. Not thinking about what it might have done. If it was a baby, she would have taken the baby. Even though it would have put all of those hungries on her. She doesn't care. She just trusts that everyone's going to keep her safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does, by doing that, alert some of them. And they are able to somehow, alert as few as they can and get themselves to higher ground. Get themselves into the hospital where they hole up there. Got to do a little reconnaissance for safety, or as Parks calls it, recce. I think that's a fun Britishism.
So amazing. I feel like that's what we should refer to all of our preparations for podcasting now as recce's.
Yeah. So as they're kind of exploring that, Melanie's left with Caldwell, which Justino is not very fond of initially, but Melanie's like, no, I'm good. I'm okay. And she does use that as an opportunity to get information on herself from Caldwell, because she knows, Caldwell's not going to sugarcoat or withhold scientific information.
She's not.
For Melanie's peace of mind. She doesn't care about that.
She doesn't.
She's not holding or protecting her from anything. So she's like, nope, this is my time where I'm alone with Dr. Caldwell and she's not going to try to kill me right now. So let me get answers. And so that's where the movie gives us the background on Melanie and the other kids like her in that classroom setting, and what they are is children born from a mother who was infected during pregnancy.
Yep, a second generation hungry.
Yeah. So then the embryo is also infected, but perhaps with half immunity, like Caldwell says, to the pathogens. So this kind of creates a hungry who is also fully human, able to think, reason, and learn, but still driven by instincts and urges as well.
It's interesting, their little conversation about it, because Melanie says babies can't eat people. And Caldwell responds with, these ones did. The mothers were probably all infected at once in a single incident. Then the embryos they were carrying took the infection as well through the placenta, and they ate their way out. And that's when you realize what second generation hungry means. They ate all the organs. Like, they ate their way out. It just sounds,
quite terrifying.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah, and it's funny, we learn that, and you're like, oh my god, she is a terrifying monster. And then to cut from that to this overnight scene of you hear her voice while everybody's sleeping, and she's sitting next to Kieran, reading him a bedtime story, and calling him by his first name in this bond, and you're like, oh, but she's actually pretty sweet, so it's okay.
Yeah. Because she's winning everyone over. Because Kieran Gallagher, was following the lead of Parks. Stay away, don't touch, don't do this, don't do that. And this is the situation. They're all starting to realize that putting her in a box and saying that she's one thing when she's also something else wasn't going to get anyone anywhere. And then they realized that she could be an asset in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, Caldwell even tells her, you're not like anything that's ever existed before.
Right. So yeah, that was, I really do like that scene and those things, because it gives you like some good background of
it does.
It's a good exposition kind of moment. Yeah,
because the book goes in, the book is so detailed that
there's a lot of science in there. Yeah. Which is cool. But yeah, in a movie, again, you narrow it down to one conversation scene and do it really well, and I think they did.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the next morning, there's too many hungries that have gathered outside due to whatever commotion, and Melanie volunteers to help since she's safe from them. They're not going to hurt her, and they're like, Caldwell's like, you let her out of here, and she's just going to run off and never come back.
Yeah, but
because she knows what our mission is, but not with Helen Justino there.
No.
That bond is too strong, and so she says, "No, I will be back." And she goes out. She finds and eats a cat.
Didn't enjoy that part.
Yeah,
but she was hungry also, so she had to go. Like they hadn't been able to find food for her, so she had to get out.
Right.
To go feed.
Yeah, and so she does feed, and then she's just mesmerized, exploring this outside world and what's left behind of human civilization. She's looking through houses and finding furniture and doors and toys and all these things that she's just not used to. And really exploring. And then she does find a dog. And as far as we know, the dog was okay, at least for a little bit. We saw how easy she was able to catch that cat. So I don't know if that dog's getting away from all of those hungries, but
that dog was so cute. And all I could think is, run, little dog, run.
Right.
As fast as you can to get away.
Yeah, because that's another thing, is she doesn't seem as driven to spread and feed like these other hungries do. It's more of a survival linked with feeding. To where she's hungry, she has to feed, and she gets frenzied. But then once she's fed, she is calmed.
I wonder if that's because of the environment she was growing up in, where everything was just so regimented. She never really got to that state because she was always fed on time, every time.
Yeah.
So I wonder about that.
Yeah, because even then, she's able to hold this dog and carry it without this urge and need to tear into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's fed, she's good. She can carry the dog back to the hospital and use it to lead all the hungries away. She can spend time with the other people. Once she gets hungry, she's like, I have to go.
Yeah.
Get away from me.
Like any hangry person.
Right. But when she's fed, she's like, we're cool. We're buddies. We can hang out. Pass the coffee. You know, she's fine. So it is interesting there. But, you know, she comes back and tells me, it fell off with the mask that they put on her. I was like, sure, they all say that.
And she's covered in blood on her new clothes.
Yes, I'm not hungry anymore. But Parks makes sure, no, we're still handcuffing you and putting that thing right back on.
But he tells her good job. When she goes out on the missions and she comes back, he's good job.
He's very pleased with her. Yeah, you see, she's growing on him. I mean, yeah, he's entrusting her with scouting ahead. Like I said, that when they get to that next big city area, even gives her Kieran's radio thing, teaches her how to use it.
It's too bad Kieran wouldn't keep the radio on him when he needed to.
Yeah.
That kind of cost him in a real big way.
Yeah, just a little. Yeah, so she finds this route, and she's having so much fun with this walkie-talkie. But then is able to lead them down this other route, which, looking at the poster, or like the billboard, the ad there, of this like pet adoption agency.
Yeah.
And Justin walking up and sees how she's staring at it. He goes, "Do you want a cat?" And she goes, "I already had one."
Yeah.
Like, this is such a dark joke, but I love it so much. It's like, that is dark humor at its best. I appreciated that a lot.
Definitely. Well, Kieran has gone out on his own adventure, and she sees these children when she's on her little adventure. Mm-hmm. So she sees these children who don't speak, but all seem to be in decent health. They have no language skills because they've been living out on their own. Yeah. They're getting the call from Beacon, which Beacon is being overrun. So that doesn't sound like they're going to be coming in to save the day. But at the same time, Melanie comes back and is reporting that there are these kids. They have Kieran's scent. We have to go save him. And she starts sniffing like a bloodhound. Yeah. To get them to Kieran, but it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw what happened to Kieran. Said he goes out on a supply run of his own, and he's lured inside of a shop. He's baited and led there strategically. These kids, they are very intelligent, very smart, just like Melanie. They may not have the logic or to some degree, like academic skills or the language skills or communication with other people. But I mean, they work like a pack of Neanderthals. I mean, it's this,
They use grunts to get the point across, and this one kid goes in the middle of the circle and just starts sniffing, inhaling, trying to get them all to do it so they realize that there's a scent and they need to go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so they led him there because there's like these little, there's like cans of food that are almost like this perfect breadcrumb trail leading to that shop door. Like they knew how to bait him in and bring him there, and then as he's inside in a corner, one kid kind of corners him and then lures him in. He's got this rat in his hand, like, "Here, you want food?" Kieran didn't want the food. That's not the food he wanted. But not realizing that this was a kid like Melanie, he just thought it was some kid lost, trying to survive out in the world. And he's like, "Buddy, you don't need to be out here right now. Let me help you." And he lures him into the other kids. It doesn't go so well. R.I.P. Kieran.
They didn't leave much of him.
No. And then when the others show up, it's too late. But Melanie realizes it is part 2 of the trap. They are not out of the woods. And so if they go out, and that's when she confronts the other kids, fights with the leader of the pack. She nicks the handcuffs off of Parks, which is really smart. So she can use that to bind him down and then beats him to death with his own bat. It's pretty brutal. That's where you have that moment. She says, pretend to be scared of me. And Parks goes, pretend.
Yeah, they're still pretending.
You're terrifying.
I feel like in the scene when they went and they found Kieran's body, that's when I felt like Melanie was starting to change a little bit about how she was looking at things. Instead of it being, well, these are the adults and I'm the child and this is the life I've been used to, she started to look at, well, these kids are like me and there's more out there like me, and maybe these
people I'm with are the minority.
Yeah. Because Eddie sees Kieran and just makes this comment, "Dirty little fuckers." And Melanie says, "They just want to live. Everyone wants that." And I just started thinking, she's getting with the program. She's starting to understand that the people she's with are not in the majority.
Right.
And why is it okay for them to dictate her life and whether she lives or dies?
Right. And she has quite a big moment with that, of course. I mean, as you see, she kind of establishes dominance with these other kids and then has them thinking, you know, no, these, you know, these two people are for me. I'm keeping them for myself, and takes them back. But I think when she felt, even though it was very tribal,
very tribal
connection,
yeah,
there was this connection of like, these are people like me to some degree. And then getting back to Rosie, which I don't think it's ever called that in the movie, but
no, it is in
Rosie,
the book though.
Yeah. Just a random tangent for a second. Yeah. When I saw it immediately, because this big armored, mobile lab, it's the Rosalind Franklin, which is, you know, referred to lovingly as Rosie in the books. So
in the books.
In the books.
Plural.
Yes. So that was, I saw it. I saw Rosalind Franklin on the side. I went, Rosie! Like, that's something that sticks with me. Because without giving too much of anything away, Rosie is very important. I mean, Rosie plays a bigger part in The Girl with All the Gifts novel as well. But also, we see that Rosie has been abandoned here. Who was the team that was in there before? What did they do? Is the answer out there?
Where are they?
Like,
yeah.
Maybe I know what happened to the people that were in Rosie beforehand. Maybe there's a prequel book that goes all into that.
Maybe you don't spoil that for someone who might want to read that book.
No. Oh, like I said, I won't go too much into it, but there's a prequel book.
Yeah.
And you might get more Rosie. Just maybe.
Good.
These people they're looking at pictures of in there,
yeah,
maybe we get a little background. Who knows?
I have such a curious mind too, so when I'm seeing everything in any of the post-apocalyptic movies where they don't show you what happened before, I'm always interested in what happened before. Like, I want to see it unfold so I can figure out, oh, where did they go wrong, or just to know. Like, I'm just really naturally curious about stuff like that.
Yeah. So now I will, we could wait, talk about it later, but, I'll make the plug now so people know. If you want to know more, yes, same author, same thing. There is a prequel book that came out after, The Boy on the Bridge. I also really, really, really loved it. And it is a prequel story that leads up to kind of some of the stuff here. And it gives a lot more scientific background on a lot of things too. It's really cool.
I know. I feel like I'm going to have to use one of my Audible credits if it's on Audible.
Oh yeah, I believe it is. They get back to Rosie. That's why I said, because I called it Rosie.
Yes.
All of my notes, because that's what it is to me. Not just the mobile lab, the big vehicle. I was like, it's Rosie.
It's Rosie.
Love Rosie. Yeah, because they get back and Caldwell has sucked all of the oxygen out of Rosie in order to, when they seal themselves in, they pass out. So she's like, I'm doing this mission. I'm doing this biopsy right now. She's dying from sepsis from the cut that she got back in the lab when the Hungries first broke in to the base. And she's like, it is now or never. Fuck what everybody else says. I'm doing it. Just unbeknownst to her, Melanie doesn't need oxygen like the rest of us.
No, she does not.
Right, which I like, she's trying to explain to Melanie even before they go out. But yeah, so she's trying to explain to Helen before Melanie comes back to tell them they needed to save Kieran about, it's like, we need to do this. This vaccine is my mission and I don't have long and I have to get this done. I'm the only person who can do it. And when she's explaining things to Helen again, and she says she wouldn't feel a thing. And I love the comeback from Just a No, where she says, well, that's more your thing than hers. Like, ooh, ouch.
Loved it. Loved it.
Man. Yeah. But like I said, Melanie doesn't really need the oxygen. We see, we talked about she's sitting there in her cell counting and counting. We didn't realize how high she was counting. She says she would sit in her cell and count to 1,000 while holding her breath. Because the fungus takes care of a lot of oxygen for her.
It does.
And Caldwell then realizes that there, so Melanie was able to get the jump on Caldwell, catch her off her game a little bit here. To basically just tell her, like, why do you want to do this? And they have this really, I think Caldwell does a great job at trying to convince Melanie to sacrifice herself for this vaccine. I mean, she's invoking the survival and life of Helen, and she's really laying it on. I mean, she's giving the best, pitch that she possibly could for this thing. But she messes up. One, by revealing how the spore seed pods are going to be opened.
That was not smart on her part.
But two, she has this moment where Melanie asks, exquisite mimicry of, observed behaviors. Do you still believe that? Or do you think we're actually alive now after everything you've seen? And when she says, no, you're alive, that's the answer that Melanie needs to realize then why should it be us who die for you?
Yep.
Which, damn.
Because as much as we got this arc with Eddie Parks the whole way through, Melanie's been on this journey of discovering who she is. Like, what all of this means. Because her life has been in a cell. She's been wheeled around. She's never been really outdoors and done all the things. She's experiencing all of this and realizing that maybe I don't have to be the one who gives it all up.
Right.
Maybe it's my species that is the next, in evolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, after that with Caldwell, she grabs a pack of matches and takes off outside, tells Caldwell, stay here, you'll be safe if you stay here, which Caldwell does not listen.
No.
Follows Melanie out, gets herself surrounded by the hungry children, and R.I.P. Dr. Caldwell as well.
She became a buffet.
Yes. And Melanie goes to that giant spore tree tower that they ran across.
The BT tower.
Uh-huh. And she does. She lights it on fire, activates the pods, releases all the spores everywhere. And then, sadly for her, because she had grown a little connected with Sergeant Parks, too, and to see that he had come out he had woken up and was following her and looking for her. And by the time she runs into him, I mean, he's already been infected by the spores, and he's slowly dying and being taken over. And he asks what she did, and just their back and forth. Again, such a powerful moment for her.
So
in that arc
big.
and the decision she makes, where she said, I made the pods open. And he goes, oh, Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see he's just so overwhelmed. She goes, it's going to be all right. He says, no, it's over. It's all over. And her response is, it's not over. It's just not yours anymore. Which, again, yeah. Why should it be us who has to die for you? It's not yours anymore.
I feel like that should be
time.
the tagline.
Yeah.
Why should it be us that has to die? Why should it be us who die for you? But she does have this little conversation where we get to see a little bit more of Parks, where he's talked about, last time he saw his wife, she was 7 months pregnant. And so he gives a little bit, we get to see just a glimpse into him a little bit. Yeah. But he asks her to do something for him that's difficult for him to ask her to do. And I think difficult for her to do, which is he doesn't want to turn into a hungry.
Yeah.
So he asks her to shoot him before he turns.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love at the very end, after she does it, she says, transit.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Okay.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Yeah, she has that moment where she just cocks the gun ready, and he's like, how do you know how to do that? And she has that classic 80s, 90s PSA. I learned it from watching you.
But it shows you how intelligent she is. She's been watching and learning this her whole life. What else is she going to do? So she watches. She's watched the soldiers. She's been in a routine, and routines get boring. So she learned exactly what she needed to do.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really kind of her story. Her arc.
Is.
I mean, we get the little bit more at the end, which is more, focused on Justin now. So I might hold off on that until we get.
Yeah.
Because I've got a little bit of notes on her. I've covered most everything. Again, like I said, we would, but I might hold off.
Yeah, Justino. I feel like she's the next one though, so we kind of have to go
absolutely.
there.
Yeah. Just again, because being such a big fan of the book, the first time I hear, good morning, Miss Justino, my heart just swelled. I get the smile because reading the book, it's just every time. I mean, you can almost hear
the kids,
this voice of Melanie and these kids in your head as you're reading it of just, good morning, Miss Justino. And every time Melanie's Miss Justino, Miss Justino, Miss Justino. Like it's just repeated so much, and this because she's so attached to her that it's almost like she loves the sound of that name in her own mouth and in her own voice, and so I get used to reading that name so much and almost hearing it in my head as I'm reading it in this like voice. And so then to see the movie and be like, it's so nice to hear it. You're like, here we go.
Well, she to me was the one who cared the most about the kids, because even after they've escaped, she's concerned about them. She's like, where are they? In the book, it goes into more detail. Here it's really it's just a little blip conversation. In the book, there are multiple times that she questions, someone needs to go back and let them out. Like, this is it's not okay. Like, she's concerned about her students.
Yeah.
And for them, for Caldwell and Parks to think that she would not form an attachment when she's the one who is acting with kindness at every interaction with the kids. That it was stupid on their part to think that she was going to get through this and not form an attachment.
Right.
I mean, just dumb.
Yeah, which I'm trying to remember. You might have a little more on this. Because there's a little scene with Caldwell and Justino speaking where about that attachment. And she said, well, she loves me. It's like, yeah, she loves you. And it's like, but she doesn't know the person that I am. And then they leave it at that. Mm-hmm. And if I remember correctly, the book definitely digs in a lot more on Helen Justino's past. And
yes, she is
a little rocky for sure. She has made mistakes, and they don't go into it in the movie any further than that. But I remember seeing that scene in this conversation in the movie and thinking, no, I remember reading a lot more about that.
Yeah. Yeah. She goes into this conversation. I don't think it was with Caldwell. I think it was with Parks, where she talks about killing a child by accident.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't turn herself in, and then everything went to hell in a handbasket. So she realized she was getting away with it, but she's not getting away with it because it still bothers her. It still lives in her head. It's taking up space in her head.
Yeah, and that's right. It was with Parks, because that's the question she asked was, have you ever killed a kid? And he says, we all do what we have to do. Yeah, so it was Parks, not Caldwell. But yeah, that little where she said, I'm not a good person. And they leave it there. And so remembering like, oh, no, there's definitely a mistake that she made.
Definitely. Yeah, she talks a little bit about it with Parks, but not as much as what they say in the book about, she gives the rundown in the book about, everything went to heck in a handbasket, and this is what I didn't have to go forward, and I realized I was getting away with it. Mm-hmm. I mean, Parks is right. They've all had to do things that that they're not proud of, but the way things are, it's a much different world.
Yeah. But, so Steve, I have not many other notes, again, because everything is covered in the big main Melanie overarching with everybody else. But just other little Justino things I like, of course, is when they're all in the van and Parks realizes she's in the van and they stop, and the Parks is like, we're going to kill her. And Caldwell's like, no, we need her alive for this. And Helen instead is just run, just get away from these people. This is bad for you. And Melanie takes off for a little bit and then stops and just sits down and is just taking in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And after this conversation, they're like, well, we do need to keep her with us. She is important. And Helen goes back up to her, and you see this connection, just, don't come too close to me. And then, you can see that Melanie is having this kind of questioning moment of, who am I? Am I the monster? Am I... And Helen has that moment where she says, you saved me, just like in your story. And Melanie is like, but it's not like my story, because the girl in my story didn't eat people. That's what the monsters did. And she's having that kind of existential dread on, who am I? What am I? And it's good that Justineau is there for her through all of that.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I feel like this movie was about Melanie digging into and trying to figure out who she is.
Yeah. And it all comes kind of to Pandora's box. She's the one that holds this box with all of these, she brings the gifts, but also opens this box to a world of torment and destruction for a lot of people. But there's hope in the bottom, even though, like I said, it's may not be hope for the human race, but there's hope for this second generation of Hungries who are alive and have thoughts and can learn and are functioning, living children who will become functioning, living people who have inherited this earth, and she's given them hope. And then also really plays off of Schrodinger's cat that Caldwell loved to keep bringing up is, what is Melanie? Well, she says, am I alive or am I the monster? Well, both.
Yeah.
You can be, when she says, well, the cat is alive or dead, the cat's both. Well, that's stupid. Well, she comes to learn, maybe that's not so stupid after all. Maybe I'm both. I can be both. I can live in both things at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So the only note that with Helen Justineau is just that ending. Like I said, hold off a little bit. Didn't hold off too long. But yeah, where we see, the spores are all falling, but Helen was still passed out a little bit longer. So she stayed in Rosie there. She's safe inside there with the airlocks. And we see that somehow some time has passed. And Melanie has somehow been able to retrieve the kids from the base. I don't really know how. They don't really show too much of that must have been quite something. I don't think they got too far, but
yeah, no.
So she's got the other students from the base mixed with the wild, hungry children she's found, and she's wrangled everybody into one group, and she's got Justineau as the teacher again, telling them their stories and teaching them things, catching the wild children up to where the others are, and Justineau kind of has this role as the enlightener and teacher of this next generation, which means not really a happy ending.
No.
Humanity is kind of doomed. Justineau's left as one of these last people on Earth, if not the last. Not read the book, so there's things, but
yeah, I preferred that book ending. I really did, because there was a little more hope.
But yeah, it's not really a happy ending for Helen Justineau, because she's alive, but she can't leave Rosie. She is stuck inside her. She's kind of swapped places with Melanie. She is now waking up every morning in her own little prison cell where she has to go through this whole routine every day that she can't break from.
Yeah.
Melanie's in charge now.
Yeah, she definitely was wrangling those kids. That's for sure. Yeah. The animal kids. The intelligent wildlings. I guess wildling is a good term for them. Yeah. Yeah, the book has a different ending. Subtly different. In the book, Justineau can wear an environmental protection suit and is able to go out and be among the intelligent Hungries. And she does start teaching them the alphabet.
Yeah.
I liked that better. It had a little more hope.
In the movie version, maybe they eventually can get to that.
I hope so.
For her, it'd be good. But yeah, that's really notes there. So I don't know. I feel like if I have any other notes about any other characters, I've covered most of them. So let's see just what small things for Parks. Very early on, he is very attached to the phrase "you friggin' abortions."
Yes,
it was almost like he said it once. I was like, "Oh snap, this is my thing. I'm gonna say it as much as I can now." And so yeah, we talked Paddy Considine. I love him doing that. Yeah, we didn't really talk about the scene when they do stop to get water, and Gallagher forgot his suppressor on his gun, so when he fires off at a sound he heard, it brings hungries into them, and they kind of have to fight their way out to escape, where Dylan, the other soldier that's with them, is bitten. Although he's denying that he was bitten, but Parks is smart enough to make sure. He doesn't let him into the truck, and he's like, well, we're going to wait, because it's not going to take long. We've seen that transformation's pretty quick if you did get bitten, and so he's like, we're just going to wait for a second, and we'll see if you got bit or not. And clearly he did, and as soon as he shows that he's infected, Parks just shoots him, and they take off. Well, try to take off. It doesn't start, but that's kind of, he just shoots him and closes the door. He's like, all right, that job is done for now.
That kind of reminded me of on World War Z when Jerry and his family are in the apartment building and they're not really sure how they spread the virus that causes everyone to turn into zombies. So he thinks he may be infected, so he runs to the edge and waits and counts to see if he's going to turn into a zombie. So that kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Uh-huh. Caldwell would be next. Don't know if I have any more. So yeah, just her scientific understanding of a lot of things when they come across the hungries that were dead and, just shells, like what Ophiocordyceps does to ants at a certain point. It's that same thing where, yeah, the vessels, the bodies that were holding this fungus that they were controlling, they've moved on from that. It's the next step in the evolution, as she says, where the bodies are dead now, but they've all clumped together into these like giant spore pods that are coming off these stalks, and they find some smaller ones, and then that's when they find the tower. Which is why, it's like, oh, they've moved on. There's no hungries in the area because they've all clumped together and died, and now they have all sprouted these giant stalks for the spore pods. And yeah, she knows where that's leading to airborne pathogen spores, where she says, you'd catch it just by breathing. And so it's like, what does that mean? It's like the end of the world, probably.
Yeah.
And that's it there for her. I think the first time we really see the hungries was really cool. Talking about hungries now. Moving on to those.
Let's talk about the hungries.
Right. Just little extra notes that I've got. I think the first time we really see them is pretty cool. I mean, we see all of them outside the gate, the perimeter, when Parks is transporting Melanie. But the first time we see them up close is, when they do breach in, and as the shutters are coming down in the lab, where Caldwell's like, no, we're going to go ahead and just do it now. Just close ourselves off. And then you see them in the background running through into the facility.
Oh,
and the one comes crashing through the window and grabs Dr. Selkirk. That's really cool.
I liked that a lot, too.
Yeah.
It's like, you thought you were going to get down to business, but guess what? You're closed for the day.
Yeah. But yeah, that's literally all the notes I have. So,
well, we have done pretty much all of mine, except I have an interesting list of some of the differences between the two.
All right.
The book and the movie. The book, I loved that there was so much character development. He was so descriptive when he wrote this book, talking about each of the characters, so you would get a good visualization in your head, even if the movie flipped it all around on you. Because it did. We've already talked about the flip-flop of Melanie and Helen's races. Instead of Caldwell deciding what numbers or what children she was going to take to dissect, she had Melanie give her a number. So that was different. In the book, it wasn't Melanie giving a number. Let's see. Parks and Helen had a little bit of not a huge romance, but they kissed at least. In the book, that was more of a thing that we didn't get to see. And it kind of made me laugh because Melanie had that quote where she's never going to touch you. It just made me laugh. I'm like, well,
not in this universe. Not in this universe. The multiverse, it's a little different.
Yeah. Of course, there's no Junkers in the movie. We did get them in the book. In the book, Kieran Gallagher actually left them. He wasn't out on a run. He ran away. And he died with a group of children. Like, they did kill him, but he does try to shoot them first, not just use a grenade. In the book, Caldwell does kill and examine one of the intelligent kids. She doesn't do that in the movie. In the book, Parks is bitten. It's not about the spores killing him. And I don't believe Melanie killed the leader of the kids in the book like she did in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that didn't happen. In fact, she didn't want to tell the adults about the kids at all because she was afraid that they'd be experimented on. Which, why wouldn't she think that, given Caldwell's blind devotion to the mission at hand?
Yeah.
Which was futile, really. As soon as they left that base, it was futile. Like, it was not going to happen. To me, her wanting to do the dissecting of Melanie was just... she didn't have to do it. And her wanting to was just ridiculous because it wasn't going to change anything.
Right.
So those are I believe, the major differences that I saw.
Nice.
Caldwell was wicked cold in the books, too. Like, she was... I did not like her at all. But like I said earlier, Glenn Close made me warm up to her just a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, we mentioned that. Yeah, it was like Glenn Close added an extra layer to the character. And I kind of figured she would. That's why I said when the casting was announced for this movie after I read the book, and I was like, oh, yes, please give me all the Glenn Close as Caldwell. I need that.
Yes, especially after reading the book. There was another cool scene, too, though, when Melanie wants Helen to read a story to the class. It's about Greek mythology. And in the book, Helen gives Melanie the actual book to take back. She slides it down in her chair so that no one can see it, and she sneaks it back to the room so she can read it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, she's taken, the next day. So she didn't really get much time to read it. It's very unfortunate. But those are all the notes that I have. I really enjoyed the movie, but I really love the book. I think there's just so much in it. The style, the way that the characters are built right from the beginning. And there are arcs of characters, but there was nothing out of... Characters were doing what you would think they would do based on what they gave us as their background information. And if there were changes, it's because you actually visibly in your head see the changes and the arcs as you go.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that it took me so long to read it because I've had it for a year, but it was worth it to take, to make the time to read it so we could cover it on the podcast and really talk about the book as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's been kind of a long time coming. I'm glad that we finally did this one. Again, just being a huge fan of it in any form that it has existed. And yeah, I wonder if we'll see any more movie adaptations.
I hope
from the worlds that M.R. Carey has built. Again, because knowing, I've read most of them and I've seen all the worlds he's built because the ones I haven't read are part of a trilogy that I have read, at least the first book. So I know so the worlds that he builds, the newer ones I could see really working well, but then he also has some that are very supernatural thrillers that deal with a lot of mental things and things that are going on in people's minds and in their heads and their thoughts. Mm-hmm. That's harder to adapt to a screen when a lot of the action and suspense is all going on in somebody's head. That is a little harder to do. So
yeah,
but I'd be interested to see. So yeah, because he under the name of M.R. Carey, under that title, he hasn't written a ton. I could give you what they are, owning all of them. So I would definitely recommend checking out. Of course, Girl with All the Gifts was the start, and then Fell Side, which kind of a supernatural thriller, takes place in a women's prison.
That sounds
really
like
cool.
a bizarre location for a supernatural thriller.
Yep, and then there's Boy on the Bridge, which was the prequel to Girl with All the Gifts. And then he released Someone Like Me, which is just wow. Another kind of psychological, mental thriller of this woman who I don't even want to give anything away on that one. It's yeah, just if you like his writing, just go into that one blind. It's incredible. Someone Like Me. And then these last books have been this like 3-part trilogy he kind of wrote together in like a post-apocalyptic yet primitive world. And it's the Rampart trilogy, which is the Book of Coley, the Trials of Coley, and the Fall of Coley. So
wow. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit before we recorded.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we have to move on to the other tidbits and trivia items that I found for this wonderful movie. Mm-hmm. So half of the film's £4 million budget came from the BFI Film Fund and Creative England, making it the biggest investment that Creative England had ever made, one of the largest ever for the BFI Film Fund. In an interview with Mom Advice, M.R. Carey stated that we went a slightly different way in the movie, especially when it came to point of view, where the novel moves between the 5 characters and lets us see what's going on in all their heads. The movie sticks with Melanie all the way, and there are no junkers in the movie. Yes. Clarified that already. So M.R. Carey had a cameo as one of the Hungries that are railing against the fence, trying to get into the military base. He is near the front wearing a jacket and blue shirt. I'll have to re-watch and see if I can see him. Pake has already given you all the information on the Ophiocordyceps
unilateralis.
Okay.
Or unilateralis, as
unilateral?
Caldwell.
Yes.
Caldwell unilateral. It's do a rear wheel.
Oh
unilateral. See, I always say unilateralis, but unilateralis is how Caldwell pronounces it, and so it's probably correct. But Ophiocordyceps, I can say 20 times fast.
I can tell that. It's basically a zombie fungus that infects carpenter ants. We've already been down that road. We don't have to talk about it again.
Yeah.
The base where the Hungries breach the fences soon after the beginning is filmed at the former RAF Cardington in Bedfordshire. The base was built for the UK's airship program in World War I. The site's now known as Cardington Studios. And I don't feel like I need to go into the prequel novel because Pake's already talked about it. There is a tagline, though, that I saw on one of the book covers, and it says, "Not every bridge should be crossed." And it basically, Pake has already alluded to some of this, and it has to do with Rosie and maybe the crew. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to elaborate on it any more than that.
Right.
Not giving anything away, and maybe someday we can cover it on Run for Your Lives, if it's ever made into a movie.
Yeah, I would like to see that world and some of the visuals and some of the characters that were in that book, that I'm a huge fan of the way they were written, obviously. I mean, just like some of the characters here, there's one of the hungry children, intelligent children, whatever, that is described in Boy on the Bridge that I was like, that is the coolest thing. It's like, even as like a tribal, crazy, wild zombie child, this little dude has style. And I was like, to where I wanted to commission a friend of mine to like draw a whole piece of it because I was like, man, that visual is so cool.
You should do that. Maybe I'll start reminding you, hey, because I know which friend you're talking about, and you definitely need to do it.
So I'd like to see that. I know that the prequel book, Boy on the Bridge, was not as well received as Girl with All the Gifts. There are a lot of articles out there of people being very disappointed in it and thinking it did more harm than good to the story that they loved in Girl with All the Gifts. But I don't agree. I thoroughly loved it, and I think it built that world even more for me. I think I did. I read some of the like blogs and articles and thought pieces on why I did. And as the time I was like, okay, your thoughts are valid, but you're wrong. I'm like, I mean, it's like, if you look at it one way, sure. But I was like, but you got to look at it from a different point of view.
I feel like when you go into any prequel, you have to forget some of what you saw or read before to open you have to open your mind to what journey that's going to be.
Yeah, because a lot of people complain about like, well, we have a prequel, like we know the world like ends basically, and everything that they're working, all the science and all the things they're trying to do in Boy is futile because we know where it goes from
that
there.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, but enjoy the story and the characters that are being given to you then. Don't worry about what happens later. Yeah. Enjoy what you're looking at now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think of it like Titanic. You go to the movies, you know the boat's going to sink. Exactly. But you still want to see the story, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Man, all right.
I think we did it. There's that feedback phone.
Man. All right. I'm hoping we have some stuff from here. All right. Check the feedback phone and holy crap, we got a lot of feedback this week. We got more than usual, and I really like that. And also, giving them a little scan, there might be maybe my favorite and coolest feedback we've ever had included in this one, and I cannot wait to get to it. But we'll get to it when we get to it.
We will. First, we have a message from Jerry about It Follows. He says, I love that it never quits, just keeps walking and walking towards its intended victim. Agreed.
Yeah, very creepy. Very, very creepy.
So creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting some feedback on previous movies, as we do. We're going back to It Follows, and then now we have some thoughts on another previous one in Bird Box. And we got a lot of good stuff from Tony over here on Instagram. She gave us first pre-watch and post-watch feedback, which is interesting. I like it, though. I like it. At first, she goes,
does that for us sometimes, and I appreciate that from her.
Yeah. So at first, she says, I just turned the movie on as I see this post. I remember liking it, but it has been a while. I do remember she wouldn't name the kids, and she was so mean to them. Anyway, I'm watching now. So cool seeing your setup. I'll try to give you some feedback later. Yeah, we the feedback or the setup thing is referring to on our Instagram and Twitter and stuff. Daphne posted a picture of our computer setup and recording setup since we were in the same place recording last week. I did find another portal to get back home, so we're in separate places again. Thankfully, I wasn't trapped in whatever dimension I was in. We're good. I got home.
It was fun.
It was fun.
It was so cool to get to do that in person. It was the first time. So, yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And then after watching, she goes on with more feedback saying, okay, I finished Bird Box. I liked it the first time around. I enjoyed it so much more, but Sandra Bullock is so great as Mallory. I'm less hard on her this time around, being tough with the kids because I knew the ending and that she loved them very much. Her relationship with Tom is beautiful and ends so tragically with him dying, saving their lives. John Malkovich is always fun to watch. What I hated, the river scene when they fell in the water and A, don't drown, and B, find each other, and C, crack their skulls on a rock. Like, seriously, unbelievable. But all is forgiven when they are safe inside the sanctuary because the girl and boy get their names, Olympia and Tom. She, meaning Sandra Bullock's character, scatterbrained. Also, I realized I can leave a much longer reply here on Instagram. I always think my feedback feels so incoherent. You don't have to share this. I'm just thinking out loud. Well, we shared it all out loud.
Yes.
And we love seemingly incoherent sometimes because stream of consciousness. You listen to this podcast, you know we do the same thing all the time.
And if you want to leave the feedback on Instagram, Tony, because that works better for you, because you want to leave longer feedback, you go right ahead. I'll make sure to check it and get it into our rotation for feedback for the week. Mm-hmm. Now we are moving on to this week's movie, which is The Girl with All the Gifts. We're going to start off with Kelly, who said, such a great book, and I really enjoyed the movie as well.
Yeah.
Me too, Kelly, because I finished the book, as I said earlier in the episode. I finished the book just before we recorded the episode, so
which
was fun coming into that.
So good. All right, and this comes from Hugh Parker on Twitter. It says, it's a great book and a great film. Always wondered why the races of Melanie and Miss Justina were switched from the book, though. I hope it was nothing more sinister than Sinia Nanua being a great actress for the role, because she was great. To which we got a reply on his feedback there from the one, the only author of The Girl with All the Gifts and screenwriter for the movie, M.R. Carey himself, who I've given so much praise throughout this podcast. And yeah, hit him up on Twitter with knowing this episode was coming out with feedback. And he came through with some really cool stuff, retweeted us, which thank you, Mr. Carey, so much for that.
So much, yeah.
Really cool. And then, yeah, gave an answer to that question that Hugh was asking. So I love, so this coming from the man behind the story itself, M.R. Carey, about the casting of Sinia Nanua, which says, it was exactly that. We wanted a diverse cast, but went in without any ring fencing or preconceptions. Sinia got the role because she was awesome and had great on-screen chemistry with Gemma Arterton, which was crucial. Which
agreed. Oh my goodness.
Awesome. So we have an answer to a question. I think we even mentioned it while recording the episode, talking about the casting early on in our conversation about the movie. So it's cool to have some insight and answers to those questions from the man behind the story itself. So that's really awesome.
Yes. Yes, we really appreciated him, retweeting us and responding to Hugh's question or his comment, because that does answer something that we talked about in this episode. So I really appreciate it. And I already have purchased his prequel book on Audible so that I can listen to it.
I love it. It's a good one.
And what episode of Run for Your Lives would be complete without a message from Steve Brown? So here is what Steve had to say about The Girl with All the Gifts.
Hello, Run for Your Lives. This is Steve. This is going to be for The Girl with All the Gifts. By the way, it's not on Netflix anymore. I had to rent it on Amazon Prime. No big. But no, I'm not going to live Steve it because I don't want to. I am going to live Steve this bit though. Why are we just getting counting at the beginning? By the way, I know this movie has something to do with zombies, but I don't really know anything else about it. Ew, they feed them live worms? Okay, I don't know what these kids are, but that's freaky. And I said I wasn't going to live Steve it. I'm not. But all of them are reacting to this guy spitting on his arm, though. Do you want a cat? Already had one. Okay, so I finished the movie. Wow, interesting ending. I'm a little. I think the only thing I'm confused about is, does Miss Gustino Helen? Does she have enough food and water to sustain her in that environment to be able to teach the new generation of zombies? I guess that's what's supposed to be going on. But man, wow, good movie. Sergeant Parks, kind of a dick at the beginning, but really he wasn't though. He answered Melanie's questions. He was always, at least he was always like, I don't know, what's the word to how he treated her. He didn't treat her badly. He just treated her like a prisoner, like what she was. But then, of course, for him to end the way he did and Melanie being the one to put him out of his misery. But gosh, wow. Good movie. Can't wait to hear you guys talk about it. Like I said, I'm so busy. I probably won't even be able to listen to this one until sometime 2 weeks from now.
Wow. Thanks, Steve, for sending in that feedback.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was a hybrid live Steving / regular feedback. And I kind of really dig it.
Me too. Peggy, you're going to have to come up with a name for it. Because it's not live Steving, but it's not regular feedback. So it's got to be something. And for anyone who doesn't know, it was actually Run for Your Lives and Pake that came up with the term live Steving. And it's now kind of become a fun little commentary piece for our podcasting group.
Yeah. But yeah, that was really, really great. I'm glad you enjoyed the movie and took a lot. Yeah, we talked about a lot of those same things in the episode whenever you have listened to this. So yeah, that was awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Funny thing on Twitter this week is one of the other folks that we follow on Twitter came up with a question. Basically, name a movie that traumatized you as a child. And Peg, what did you say in response to that?
I responded as the Run for Your Lives account. Yeah, with a movie that we covered a long time ago. So if you want to go back and talk about that. Yeah, Dante's Peak, for sure. Traumatized me a long time as a kid. I just had that poor grandma. If you know, you know. We talked about that. If you've listened to that episode, or go back and check our episode out if you're a newer listener. yeah, Dante's Peak. Man, that scene lived in my little kid brain for way too long, and I was like, no, just like nightmares, man. Nightmares.
You know what? For me, it was Children of the Corn.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically the beginning of the movie. There's a scene in the diner where the kids, under the guise of the boy preacher, kill all the adults in the town, and there's just some things that happen in that scene. Even him walking into the window wearing the black hat freaked me out.
Mm-hmm.
That is one that sticks with me 100% the entire time. So I just kind of wanted to chat about that. I thought it would be fun to share that here with our listeners.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe that's a little extra feedback fun for people. We did this on Strange Indeed with Vecna songs. So maybe if people want a little extra feedback to throw in, if you don't have thoughts about certain movies or whatever, then those of you who are listening, you know where, to reach us, and Daphne will remind you very soon. Just give us what are the movies that traumatized you as a kid that maybe you've gotten over and enjoy now, or you still can't watch to this day because they messed with you so much? I'd love to know.
Yeah, so would I. But if you would like to submit feedback like Jerry, Tony, Kelly, Hugh Parker, really happy to get your feedback this week, and the amazing feedback from Mr. M.R. Carey and our good friend Steve, you can do so by going to our Facebook page at facebook.com/runforyourlivespodcast. You can email us at runforyourlivespodcast@gmail.com, tweet at us at RFYL DM us or message us on Instagram at runforyourlivespodcast. If you are enjoying the show, tell your friends. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all other podcast players, including YouTube. Go to runforyourlivespodcast.com for all the links you'll ever need. And give us a review on Apple Podcasts, as that's the best way to share the love and get us out there even more. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely do appreciate any and all feedback. It's always so awesome to hear from anyone and everyone who's got something to say on social media or calling in on voicemails. Always fun. Of course, talking about sharing the love, got to give some shout outs to things going on in the podcast universe around us. As I kind of just mentioned, my other podcast, Strange Indeed, we are wrapping up Stranger Things 4. Pretty soon we just dropped the episode 8, Papa. This week.
You know.
Yeah, so that is out. And then next week we will be covering the season 4 finale. Whew, a lot in there. I'm ready for it. I'm excited to talk about it. Prep is going to be hell because, I say that, like, how do I prep for 2.5 hours? We've done it on this podcast before with some of the movies we've covered.
We have.
But TV shows are different. There's so many other intertwined things. Well, I will see how we can do. Plus, we record Strange Indeed a little earlier in the day than we usually do over here. So I'll figure it out. I'm excited to talk about that finale, though, because holy crap. I'm not going to say anything. Most people probably have watched it by now, but still, just in case. Not spoiling anything, because we had to survive week to week without spoilers the best we could. So definitely don't want to be the reason somebody gets spoiled this far out now.
Yeah, it was rough going week to week, but I'm glad that I did. I have not seen the finale yet, but I will be watching it this weekend. Because it's 2.5 hours long, it's not something I can watch, after it. Yeah, so I'm going to be watching it this weekend. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm a little nervous for the characters, but, we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, on House Podcastica and the Better Call Saul cast. Better Call Saul is back. And the mid-season premiere is here. They've dropped the episode. I haven't listened to it yet. That is next on my docket to listen to. Probably on my way to work tomorrow. That is my plan, is to start that episode. Cannot wait. Better Call Saul. Holy crap. I mean, we talked about it a lot on that first part of the season, this final season. And now that the B season, season 6B, is it 6? Pretty sure. Yeah.
It is 6B.
6B is here, and they started off running right where they ended. Man, what a premiere. So, yeah, very excited that Better Call Saul is back. I'm really sad that it's going to be over sooner than I'm ready for, but I'm glad to have Rima and Jason and David breaking down the episodes as we go, because their conversations about it have always been so good.
Well, Better Call Saul got some Emmy love because it got some nominations for Best Show, along with Stranger Things and some other popular shows that had great seasons. But the actors also got a lot of love as well.
Good. Man, they deserve it. They really do.
It's been a great year of TV, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it really has.
It's going to be really difficult. Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Speaking of good TV, another show that just wrapped this week is the Disney Plus series, Miss Marvel. I really, really enjoyed it. I think, it's a new flavor, and Marvel's playing with a lot of new flavors right now. And I think Miss Marvel is a lot of fun, a lot of good stuff. And not going to spoil anything again, but a little tease. If you haven't watched it, or if you watched it, that season finale, maybe series finale, I don't know, dropped some real big things subtly. So big things coming for the MCU that they just kind of threw out in the Miss Marvel finale. So be looking for that, because that's holy dang. And if you want to hear coverage on Miss Marvel, definitely check out Panels to Pixels, where Mark and Steve are talking at, and then also TV Podcast Industries. You can check out Derek and John over there. And so, yeah, great Miss Marvel coverage, Panels to Pixels, and TV Podcast Industries. On Adrenaline Cinema this week, Mark and Lizzie are covering 1997's Contact. So if you are a fan of that one, definitely check that out and see what they break down with that movie. And that's really it for this week. A lot of other podcasts are kind of on their off weeks. So
yeah.
But plenty to listen to still right there. Man, a lot.
Yeah. Our friends have been busy.
Nobody's podcasting on it, but watch Westworld season 4. It's been so good too. I'm just throwing that out there.
Ah,
it's been great.
Has it?
Yes.
Because I'm behind. I need to catch up.
Just gonna throw that out there. Talk about good TV. Westworld season 4 is out. Not a lot of people are talking about it, but it's really, really good right now.
Awesome. Then I will have to dig into that this weekend as well.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, talking back to this podcast, what's happening next week right here on Run for Your Lives?
A simple documentary on a hidden Amazonian tribe becomes much more sinister when the team rescues a reptile hunter with an ulterior motive. While saving his life, he soon shows he has no regard for theirs. We are discussing the 1997 film Anaconda.
It's a fun one.
It definitely is.
Give us your thoughts, your feedback, things on that one, and we'll get to it next week.
Yes, it's going to be great. With that, we have reached the end of another fun episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Daphne.
And I'm Pake.
And if you have to run, you better run for your lives.
Bye-bye.